The crisp mountain air filled Jack's lungs as he followed the strange trail of broken trees, leading deep into the Rocky Mountains. 20 years as a forest ranger had taught him every sound and sight of these woods, but the metallic debris scattered across the forest floor was something entirely new. He adjusted his backpack and gripped his walking stick tighter. The morning sun barely pierced through the thick canopy above, but something ahead was giving off a faint blue glow. As he pushed through a dense thicket, Jack froze in his tracks. Before him lay a sight that defied everything he knew about reality. A sleek silver vessel, about the size of a small bus, had carved a path through the forest before coming to rest against a massive boulder. The ship's surface shimmered with strange symbols, and a thin trail of blue smoke rose from what appeared to be its engines. "This can't be real," Jack muttered to himself, slowly approaching the wreckage. His heart pounded against his chest as he noticed a tear in the ship's hull, large enough for him to peek inside. The interior was filled with blinking lights and strange devices he couldn't begin to understand. But what caught his attention was the sound, a soft, pained groan coming from deeper within the vessel. Jack hesitated for only a moment before his ranger training kicked in. If someone was hurt, human or not, they needed help. He carefully squeezed through the opening, using his flashlight to illuminate the darkened interior. The groaning led him to what seemed like a control room. There, slumped over a strange-looking chair, was a figure that made him question his sanity. It looked almost human, but its skin had an iridescent quality that shifted colors like an oil slick in sunlight. Intricate markings covered its exposed arms, glowing faintly in the darkness. As Jack approached, the figure lifted its head. He found himself staring into eyes that were completely silver, yet somehow conveyed pain and fear. The being wore what appeared to be a formal outfit, though now torn and stained with a strange, glowing blue liquid he assumed was blood. "Easy there," Jack said softly, holding up his hands to show he meant no harm. "I'm here to help." The alien tried to speak, but only managed a series of musical tones that made no sense to his ears. However, when it tried to stand and immediately collapsed, Jack understood that some things were universal: pain, fear, and the need for help. Without hesitation, he moved forward and carefully supported the alien's weight. Up close, he could see that while its features were exotic, they were decidedly feminine. She was light, almost weightless in his arms, and her skin felt like smooth silk against his rough hands. The alien princess, for something about her appearance and demeanor screamed royalty, looked at him with those silver eyes, and Jack knew his life would never be the same. He needed to get her somewhere safe, treat her wounds, and figure out what to do next. As he helped her out of the wreckage, a distant sound made them both freeze. It was a low hum, growing louder, coming from somewhere high above the mountains. Something told Jack that whatever was coming wasn't friendly, and they needed to move fast. Jack's cabin wasn't much, but it was well hidden in a dense part of the forest that few people ever visited. He helped the alien princess inside, carefully settling her on his worn couch. Her glowing wounds had started to dim, which he hoped was a good sign. She reached for a small device on her wrist, which had somehow survived the crash. With trembling fingers, she pressed several symbols on its surface. A soft blue light emerged, scanning the room before it focusing on Jack. To his amazement, the device projected what looked like English letters into the air, rearranging them rapidly. The alien princess watched the floating symbols intently, her silver eyes reflecting the blue light. "I'd understand now," she said slowly, her voice carrying a musical quality that made each word sound like a note in a song. "Your language is simple but beautiful." Jack tried to hide his surprise. "You can speak English. My universal translator has analyzed your speech patterns," she explained, each word becoming clearer as she spoke. "I am Princess Maria of the Celestial Empire. My ship was sabotaged by those who wished to end my father's reign." As she spoke, her iridescent skin shifted colors slightly, moving from pale blue to a deeper purple. Jack noticed the formal markings on her arms were actually some kind of royal insignia, telling a story he couldn't read. "I'm Jack," he said simply, gathering his first aid supplies. "I'm just a forest ranger, but those wounds need cleaning, even if they're unlike anything I've seen before." Maria watched curiously as he cleaned the glowing cuts with water and bandaged them. "Your methods are primitive," she observed, but her tone held no judgment. "Yet I feel better already. How strange that such simple techniques could help." "Sometimes the simple way works best," Jack replied, finishing the bandaging. "Now, about these assassins." Maria's skin paled to an almost white shade. "They will not stop until they find me. My father, the Emperor, rules over 10,000 worlds. My death would throw the Empire into chaos, as I am the only heir." Jack moved to the window, checking the forest outside. The humming sound from earlier had grown fainter, but he knew they were still out there, searching. "Your Highness," he started, but she cut him off. "Maria, please. Titles mean little when you've saved my life." "Maria," he corrected himself, "my cabin is off any official maps. We have supplies, clean water, and I know these mountains better than anyone. We can hide here while you heal and figure out how to contact your father." She studied him with those silver eyes. "You would risk your life to protect me. You don't even know me." "It's what any decent person would do," he said firmly. Maria's skin shifted to a warm golden color, which Jack was beginning to suspect indicated emotion. "The assassins have technology that can track energy signatures, advanced weapons, and neural scanners. Yet you show no fear." Jack smiled slightly. "Sometimes the most advanced technology can be defeated by the simplest solutions. Welcome to Earth, Your Highness. Let's see if we can't keep you alive long enough to get you home." The assassins found the crashed ship at dawn. 3 tall figures in black armor materialized from their cloaked vessel, their helmets scanning the area with advanced sensors. What they didn't expect to find were footprints leading in 6 different directions. "Impossible," the lead assassin growled, his helmet analyzing each trail. "The princess is injured. She couldn't have made all these tracks." Meanwhile, a mile away, Jack was teaching Maria how to walk without leaving signs. "Step where I step," he whispered, placing his feet carefully on rocky surfaces that wouldn't hold prints. "And stay close to the tree line." Maria followed his movements precisely, her natural grace making her an excellent student. "Your hunting skills," she whispered back, "they're remarkable for a primitive world." "Not primitive," Jack corrected gently. "Just different. Look there." He pointed to a broken twig. "Someone passed through here recently. Your friends are getting closer." They moved silently through the forest, Jack leading them through streams to mask their scent and over rocky outcrops that wouldn't show their passage. The morning fog provided extra cover, but Jack knew it wouldn't last long. A distant whirring sound made them freeze. Through the trees, they spotted a drone-like device scanning the forest with red beams of light. "Neural scanner," Maria breathed, her skin turning a pale gray with fear. "It can detect brain patterns." Jack didn't hesitate. He pulled a small jar from his pack and opened it carefully. The strong smell of bear musk filled the air. "The mountains are full of life," he explained. "Let's see their scanner sort through all these brain patterns." As if on cue, a family of bears crashed through the undergrowth nearby, startled by the drone. Deer bounded in another direction, and birds took to the sky in panic. The neural scanner's lights flickered rapidly, overwhelmed by the sudden burst of activity. "Brilliant," Maria whispered, her skin shifting to an admiring gold color. Using local wildlife as cover, they used the confusion to move deeper into the forest. Jack led them to a hidden cave he knew, its entrance concealed by a waterfall. Inside, they could rest briefly and plan their next move. "Your world," Maria said as they caught their breath. "Everyone thinks it's primitive because you don't have space travel. But there's so much knowledge here, isn't there? Things my people have forgotten in their rush for technology." Jack checked their supplies while keeping an ear out for pursuers. Technology's useful, but nature's been solving problems for millions of years. Sometimes the old ways work best. A loud explosion echoed from the direction they'd come. One of Jack's traps, a simple tripwire connected to his emergency flares, had worked. They heard angry shouts and the whine of energy weapons. "They'll be more cautious now," Jack said with a slight smile. "They'll have to slow down, check for more traps. That gives us time." Maria touched one of the glowing markings on her arm. "My wounds are healing faster than they should," she observed. "Perhaps there's something special about this planet after all." "Maybe," Jack agreed, already planning their next move. "But right now, we need to keep moving. The real hunt is just beginning." As dusk approached, Jack and Maria rested in a small clearing, their backs against a fallen log. The evening air was filled with the sounds of crickets and distant owls. Maria watched the sunset with wonder, her skin reflecting the orange and purple hues of the sky. "We have 3 suns in my home system," she said softly, "but none of them set with such colors." She pointed to the first stars appearing in the darkening sky. "My palace is there, somewhere beyond those stars." Jack offered her some dried berries he gathered earlier. "Tell me about your home." Maria's skin rippled with memories, shifting through shades of blue and gold. "The celestial empire spans galaxies. We have cities that float in the clouds, ships that can cross the universe in days, and technology that can reshape planets." She paused, eating a berry. "But we've lost something too." "What's that?" Jack asked, checking their surroundings out of habit. "This," she gestured to the forest around them. "Connection to the natural world. My people live in artificial environments, eat synthesized food, breathe processed air. We've forgotten what real wind feels like." A wolf howled in the distance, making Maria jump slightly. Jack smiled. "That's just the local wildlife saying goodnight. On my world, all dangerous creatures were eliminated centuries ago," Maria said. "We thought we were making things better, safer. But your Earth, it's alive in a way my world isn't anymore." Jack stood up, helping Maria to her feet. "We should move. It's safer to travel at night, and the wolves will help mask our movement from the scanners." As they walked under the starlit sky, Maria asked questions about everything. The trees, the animals, the changing seasons. Jack explained how he tracked game, read weather patterns, and survived in the wilderness. "Your knowledge," she said thoughtfully, "it's not in computers or databases. It's alive, passed down through generations, learned through experience. We've forgotten that kind of learning." A shooting star streaked across the sky, and Maria's skin paled. "That's not a star," she whispered. "They're bringing in more ships." Jack led them under thicker tree cover. "Tell me about these assassins. What are we really up against?" Maria's skin darkened with concern. "They're called the Shadow Guard. Elite warriors with biotechnology merged into their bodies. They can see in the dark, track heat signatures, and their weapons." She shuddered. "One shot can vaporize a person." "But they're not used to fighting without their technology," Jack observed. "Out here, they're the ones at a disadvantage." "You really believe that?" Maria asked, surprised. Jack nodded, guiding her around a thorny bush. "Every creature, no matter how powerful, has weaknesses. Your assassins rely too much on their tools. Take those away." "And they're lost," Maria finished, understanding dawning in her silver eyes. Her skin shifted to a thoughtful purple. "Two worlds, 2 kinds of knowledge. Perhaps we both have much to learn from each other." The night grew deeper, and somewhere above them, more ships entered Earth's atmosphere. What for now? In the quiet forest, a princess from the stars was learning that sometimes the greatest wisdom comes from the simplest things. The night sky lit up with an eerie green glow as 3 massive ships broke through the clouds. Their searchlights swept across the forest, turning darkness into day. Jack and Maria watched from inside a hollow tree trunk as smaller scout ships zipped between the mountains. "Those aren't Shadow Guard vessels," Maria whispered, her skin shifting to a deep red of concern. "They're Imperial ships, but they're not my father's. They belong to Lord Rex, the man who wants me dead." Jack observed the search pattern of the ships. They're moving in a grid, systematic. But they don't know these mountains have hundreds of caves and underground streams. A beam of green light passed over their hiding spot. Maria held her breath. But Jack had chosen well. The ancient trees' dense wood blocked their heat signatures. The beam moved on. "Lord Rex must be desperate," Maria said. "Using Imperial ships means he's no longer hiding his treachery. But why risk exposing himself?" "Because he's running out of time," Jack replied, checking his makeshift weapons, sharpened sticks, stones, and a few remaining flares. "Your father will notice these ships missing eventually." A loud explosion echoed through the valley as one of the scout ships blasted a suspicious rock formation. The sound of falling rocks filled the air. Jack winced. They were destroying his mountains. "We need to move," he said. "They're getting closer to the cave system I told you about. If we can reach it first." Maria nodded, her royal training showing in her quick understanding. "The caves will block their scanners, but the Shadow Guard will follow us in." "That's the plan." Jack's eyes held a glint of determination. "Underground, in the dark, we'll have the advantage." They waited for the searchlights to pass, then sprinted from their hiding place. Jack led them through a series of natural trenches, using the landscape for cover. Above, the ships continued their systematic search, but nature provided countless shadows to hide in. A scout ship suddenly appeared over a ridge. Its pilot spotted them, and the air crackled with energy as weapons charged. "Run." Jack pushed Maria toward a narrow gap between two boulders. Energy bolts struck the ground behind them, turning rock to glass. The scout ship was too large to follow through the narrow passage, but they could hear it calling for ground troops. They emerged on the other side to find a steep cliff leading down to the cave entrance. Behind them, they heard the heavy footsteps of Shadow Guard troops. "We'll never make it down in time," Maria said, her skin pale with fear. Jack pulled a rope from his pack. "Do you trust me?" Maria looked at him, her silver eyes meeting his. Her skin shifted to a determined gold. "Yes." In one smooth motion, Jack tied the rope around them both, anchored it to a tree, and stepped off the cliff. They rappelled down the rocky face as energy bolts sizzled past them. The cave entrance grew closer. Just before they reached the bottom, a bolt struck the rope above them. Jack felt it starting to break. "Hold tight," he yelled, swinging them toward the cave entrance. The rope snapped just as they tumbled through the opening, rolling into the darkness as rocks fell behind them, sealing the entrance. In the pitch black, Maria's glowing skin provided the only light. "Now what?" she whispered. "Now," Jack said, helping her up, "we teach them why you don't follow a forest ranger into his caves." Deep in the cave system, Maria activated her wrist device. The small screen flickered with static before projecting a holographic display into the damp air. Jack watched in amazement as she pressed several glowing symbols. "This is Princess Maria of House Celestial, requesting Emergency Protocol 793. She spoke clearly into the device. "Father, if you receive this, I am alive." The cave fell silent except for distant water drops. For several long moments, nothing happened. Then the hologram crackled, and a stern face appeared. A man with the same iridescent skin as Maria, but with markings that covered his entire visible form. "This channel is restricted." The Emperor's voice was deep and suspicious. "Your signal comes from Earth, a primitive world. No royal would survive there. This is clearly a trick." "Father, please." Maria's skin flashed with urgency. "The Shadow Guard tried to kill me. Lord Rex is behind it. He's using Imperial ships to hunt me down. I crashed on Earth, and a human saved my life." The Emperor's expression hardened. "Impossible. Humans are barely past their Stone Age. They can't even reach their own moon anymore." His eyes narrowed. "If you were really my daughter, you'd be dead on such a world." Jack stepped forward, into view of the hologram. "Your Majesty," he said firmly, ignoring Maria's attempt to stop him. "Your daughter is alive, because sometimes the simplest solutions are the best ones. While your assassins rely on technology that can fail, we rely on skills that never do. How dare you address me directly? Primitive." The Emperor began, but Maria cut him off. "Father, he speaks truth. The Shadow Guard's technology is useless in these caves. This human, Jack, has kept me alive using nothing but knowledge and courage. He's shown me that our empire's greatest weakness is our dependence on technology." A distant explosion echoed through the caves. The Shadow Guard was blasting their way in. "Those sounds," the Emperor said slowly, "those are Imperial weapons." "Yes," Maria replied. "Lord Rex sent them. Come see for yourself, Father. Come to Earth and see your daughter alive, protected by those you call primitive." The Emperor was silent for a long moment. Above them, they could hear the whine of ships searching the mountainside. "If this is a trap," he said finally, "I will reduce that entire mountain range to ash." "Then I suggest you hurry," Jack said, checking his makeshift weapons, "because your daughter's assassins are getting closer, and we're running out of caves to hide in." The hologram flickered out. Maria's skin had turned a pale blue of worry. "He doesn't believe us. Not fully. He believes enough to come look," Jack replied, hearing footsteps echo through the cave system. "That's all we need. Can you still run?" Maria straightened, her royal bearing showing through despite her torn clothes and tired appearance. "I've learned much from you, Jack, including how to ignore pain when necessary." "Good," he said, leading her deeper into the darkness. "Because we're not done teaching these assassins about primitive solutions yet." Behind them, the Shadow Guard's lights began to appear in the tunnels. But ahead lay a maze of caves that Jack knew like the back of his hand. And he had a few more surprises planned for their high-tech pursuers. Jack moved swiftly through the cave system, Maria close behind him. The glow of her skin provided just enough light to see. Behind them, the sounds of the Shadow Guard echoed off the walls, their advanced armor clanking against the rocks. "Here," Jack whispered, stopping at a narrow passage. He pulled out a small bag of powder, crushed dry peppers he used to deter bears. "Their helmets filter the air, right?" Maria nodded, then understood his plan. Her skin flickered with appreciation. "But they'll have to touch their armor with their hands." Jack scattered the powder along the passage walls, and those same hands will eventually touch their faces when they remove their helmets. They continued deeper, setting more traps. A tripwire made from vines stretched across a low tunnel. A pile of loose rocks balanced precariously above a narrow path. Each trap was simple, using only what nature provided. The first shout of surprise echoed through the caves as a Shadow Guard triggered the tripwire, falling face first into the pepper powder. More shouts followed, angry, confused, and most importantly, frightened. "They're losing formation," Maria observed, breaking protocol. "Fear does that," Jack replied, leading her through a twisting passage, "especially when your enemy is something you don't understand." They emerged into a large cavern with an underground stream. The water glowed faintly with Maria's reflection. Jack quickly got to work, using his knowledge of the cave system to their advantage. "The stream feeds into several smaller tunnels," he explained, moving rocks to direct the water flow. "When they follow us in here," a blast of energy lit up the cavern entrance. 3 Shadow Guard troops appeared, their armor scratched and covered in cave dust. Their leader raised his weapon. "Surrender, Princess," he commanded. "Lord Rex grows tired of this game." Jack pulled a final rock free. The stream water suddenly rushed toward the lower tunnel, carrying loose stones with it. The Shadow Guard's heavy armor worked against them. They couldn't keep their footing on the wet rocks. "Primitive tricks," one shouted as he slipped. His energy weapon discharged, hitting the cave ceiling. Rocks began to fall. "Move!" Jack grabbed Maria, pulling her toward a hidden side passage as the cavern began to collapse. The shadow guards scrambled for safety, but their armor slowed them down. The rushing water and falling rocks cut off their escape. When the dust settled, the cave entrance was blocked. Through the rocks, they could hear the muffled curses of the trapped shadow guards. "We should be safe here for a while," Jack said, checking Maria for injuries. "Those rocks won't hold them forever, but their weapons will be useless in such a tight space." Maria's skin glowed with a mix of amazement and respect. "You trapped elite Imperial warriors using nothing but water and rocks." "Sometimes the oldest tricks work best," Jack smiled. "Their technology makes them strong, but it also makes them predictable. They expect high-tech solutions, not simple physics." A loud bang echoed through the caves, more troops trying to blast their way in. But now they'd have to come in one at a time, through flooded tunnels filled with pepper powder and tripwires. "My father will be here soon," Maria said, her skin shifting to a hopeful gold color. "We just need to survive until then." "Then let's show them a few more primitive solutions," Jack replied, already planning their next move. The mountain shook as massive ships entered Earth's atmosphere. Through cracks in the cave ceiling, bright lights pierced the darkness. The Emperor had arrived, and his fleet dwarfed Lord Rex's ships. "That's the Imperial flagship," Maria said, her skin glowing brighter with hope. Her wrist device suddenly came alive with urgent beeping. "Father's scanning for my life signs." Jack peered through a gap in the rocks that trapped the shadow guards. They had stopped trying to break free and were now attempting to contact their own ships. Their panic was visible even through their armor. "Your father said he'd reduce the mountain to ash," Jack reminded her. "Maybe we should get above ground and show him you're okay." A thunderous voice boomed across the valley, amplified by Imperial technology. "This is Emperor Celestial. All Imperial ships in this sector are hereby ordered to stand down or face immediate destruction." Through the cave cracks, they watched as Lord Rex's ships tried to flee. The Imperial fleet made quick work of them, disabling their engines with precise shots. The smaller ships fell from the sky, caught in tractor beams before they could crash. "We need to move," Jack said, leading Maria toward a different tunnel. "I know a way up that should be safe." They emerged from a hidden cave entrance to find the valley transformed. Massive Imperial ships hovered overhead, their golden hulls reflecting the morning sun. Smaller vessels had surrounded the mountain, their weapons trained on various cave entrances. Maria stepped forward, her royal markings glowing brightly. Her skin shifted to a deep, regal purple as she raised her hands toward the flagship above. The air shimmered, and a beam of light engulfed them. Jack felt a strange tingling sensation as they were lifted off the ground. Moments later, they stood in what had to be the Imperial flagship's main chamber. The Emperor rose from his throne, his own markings pulsing with power. Around them, Imperial guards aimed weapons at Jack, but froze when they saw the trapped shadow guards being transported in behind them. "Father," Maria said firmly, stepping between the guards and Jack. "Meet the primitive human who outsmarted your empire's elite warriors." The Emperor stared at the bedraggled shadow guards, their advanced armor covered in dust, pepper powder, and cave water. Some were still coughing from the pepper, others nursing injuries from simple rock falls and tripwires. "Impossible," he whispered, but the evidence was before him. "Not impossible," Jack said, standing tall despite his worn clothes and exhaustion. "Just unexpected. Sometimes the simplest solutions are the most effective." The Emperor slowly approached them, his eyes moving from the defeated shadow guards to his daughter, then to Jack. "You protected my daughter with sticks and stones against energy weapons and neural scanners." "And pepper powder," Jack added with a slight smile. "Don't forget the pepper powder." To everyone's surprise, the Emperor laughed. A deep, real laugh that made his skin shimmer with gold and blue patterns. "Perhaps," he said, looking at his daughter with new understanding, "we have something to learn from these primitives." Maria's skin matched her father's colors as she took Jack's hand. "We have much to learn from each other, Father, starting with why Lord Rex wanted me dead." The Emperor's expression hardened. Yes, we do. But first, he turned to Jack. I believe I owe you a debt of gratitude. Primitive one. Jack, Maria corrected firmly. His name is Jack. 1 month after the mountain incident, Jack stood on the observation deck of the Imperial Palace, watching 3 suns set across an alien sky. His simple ranger uniform had been replaced with formal Imperial clothing, though he'd insisted on keeping his boots. They were perfectly broken in after all. Still getting used to the view? Maria asked, joining him at the window. Her skin shimmered with happy gold patterns as she took his hand. The sunsets are beautiful, Jack admitted, but I missed the sound of crickets and wind in the trees. The doors slid open and the Emperor entered, his formal robes flowing around him. The past month had changed him. The discovery of Lord Rex's conspiracy had shaken the Empire's foundation. Several high-ranking nobles had been implicated in the plot to eliminate Maria and seize power. The Imperial Council has finished their deliberations, the Emperor announced, his skin showing patterns of satisfaction. Thanks to Jack's testimony about the Shadow Guard's over-reliance on technology, we're implementing new training protocols. All Imperial forces will now learn to operate without advanced systems. And Earth? Jack asked, trying to keep the worry from his voice. The Emperor's skin rippled with amusement. Earth is now classified as a protected world. Its isolation will be maintained, but we'll discreetly help clean up some of the environmental damage they've done. Consider it part of my debt to you. Maria stepped forward. And my proposal about the exchange program. Approved, her father nodded. Selected humans will be invited to share their knowledge of survival skills and natural living. In return, we'll share some of our simpler medical advances. A fair trade, I think. Jack smiled, remembering how those primitive survival skills had trapped the Empire's most elite warriors. The Shadow Guards had become something of a laughingstock in the Imperial Court, though their new training program, which included sessions without their technology, was already showing promising results. There's one more matter, the Emperor said, his skin shifting to a formal purple. The Imperial Council agrees that our future ruler should understand both advanced technology and simpler solutions. Maria's skin flushed with patterns of joy as she squeezed Jack's hand. The Emperor continued, therefore, if you wish it, Jack, the Council will approve your marriage to my daughter. Your children will bridge 2 worlds. Jack looked at Maria, seeing in her silver eyes the same love that had grown during their days hiding in the mountains. On one condition, he said. The Emperor raised an eyebrow. You dare place conditions. Our children need to spend time on Earth, Jack said firmly. They need to learn both worlds properly. And I want a cabin in those mountains. Maria's laugh sounded like music. I already had one built, she admitted. With a few small improvements, of course. The windows are energy shielded, and there's a quantum communicator in the basement. The Emperor's skin showed patterns of approval. Perhaps this is the balance we've been missing. Technology and nature. Progress and tradition. The simple and the advanced. Outside, the last sunset, and the first stars appeared. Somewhere out there was Earth, still turning, its forests still growing, its simple solutions still working as they had for millions of years. And now, thanks to an unlikely encounter between a princess and a ranger, 2 worlds would learn from each other. The best solutions, after all, often lay somewhere in between the stars and the trees.